let's talk about the X headers. Let's talk about the spam headers. So here's what X headers are. When an email matches a DNS blacklist or some other criteria for inappropriate flow of mail, an X header is inserted into the message itself. So what normally you do is you reply back and you say, in the X header, this line indicates there was a spam test that was performed against your email and the message has failed and been returned to you. Now, I have something that I have on Expanding Security. It's called the Pain Pill, and I send out emails to it to my clients. People have to request and sign up for it. However, since that mail is sent from my web server itself and not from my SMTP server, my web server acts like a mail server for sending that mail, I get a lot of bounce back messages from end users where I have failed to meet the criteria for their mail server receiving. So what happens is I get a bounce back and it's an X header. It says, we don't like your from because it didn't resolve correctly. So I get that quite often with new people who subscribe to my list and they have to whitelist themselves. Along with that, what we can do is we can look at each one of the headers here and say, these are the reasons why we failed the spam test. So these are all X headers. There is nothing ever good in an X header, but it tells you how to fix your server so that you don't fall into that category of spam again the next time. So we've got distribution was inappropriate, errors 2 was inappropriate, usually that's the big one for spammers, mailer, UIDL, PM flags, priority, and sender. It may not like any of these. This is a polite way for the people who receive the mail to return it to you to say, hey, you know what, you're not playing the game like we want you to, and we want you to know what's going on. If this gets sent back to a spammer, they don't look at any of this except for to tune their spamming profile so that they can fly under the radar. Those are the common X headers. Remember, these are called the spam headers. You want to trace emails back to their origin, and by looking at the headers, you are going to get some information back. I strongly urge you to send an email to your free mail account and then have it sent back to yourself and look at all these trace headers in there so that you can see how it bounced from server to server to server and the names and the IP addresses of those servers and the data that was appended to your email. Dig down into those headers. If you're using a standard client, you're not going to see all the headers unless you go into the advanced properties. You may even have to export that so that you can see all the details. Remember, the email header information can be faked. There are plenty of ways to spoof that. So you may not look at the actual headers, the normal headers. You may dig down into the information where it talks about the mail servers themselves. So if you can confirm that the header information is correct, then you can use that original email as the primary source to figure out who the evildoer is or where this message came from. You can even dig down and find out who owns the domain name that it was sent from. If it's truly spam, you're never going to be able to find this information. By replying to that spam, what you're going to do is you're going to put yourself on 1,000 new lists that are out there. But if your headers are correct, or some of them are correct, you can track this down, and it may be that you participate in a program where by reporting this spam, by just saying, I think that this is spam, you can actually make the Bayesian filters that are out there that are protecting you, make them better at stopping the spam from flowing in. Now we need to go to the next level here, which is if we're looking at this from a forensic standpoint, and we're not worrying about spoofed or spam, we're not worrying about spoofed or spam mail, but we're worried about this mail that has come in where it's got this data in it that's something like a phishing attack, we may want to do a little bit deeper investigation because it may be that there is malware in here pointing to a particular domain that we can trace back. So that might be a reason to go a little bit deeper. Now let's talk about one of the big problems that we've run into as forensics investigators, which is web-based email. If you're not POP3 or IMAP pulling down the mail locally and storing it here for investigation, it's staying up on the server and you're viewing it through a web interface. There's not a lot of information that's coming to you at this point. There's not a lot of information sitting right here at this point. So that means that you don't have a lot to go on. You're going to have to reach into the browser itself to get some of this information. So you can try to contact the ISP that actually holds all this mail for you, and then you're going to have to get a warrant from them. The likelihood of this on free mail accounts is pretty low, but you can try sometimes. Last thing I wanted to talk about is the tool FTK and its ability to investigate any kind of problems with email or the data that's sitting in here, that's sitting on this particular client. So with FTK, we can look at all the major mail carriers that are out there if the data is delivered here, and we can then investigate that mail for this particular activity. Let's say that, again, we'll go back to the example of somebody committing fraud on this computer, and they've actually, they have Outlook, or they're using AOL Mail or Earthlink. Some of that data has sat locally on this box. When we investigate that data with FTK, it can dig down into that information, search through it, and find our keywords of evilness, mail, fraud, illicit activity, whatever its name is, based on the filtering mechanism and the tools that actually go search through the mail. And it gives us a nice, robust interface that says, here's the activity over a period of time in their communications via email. It does really good full text search, text searching that can yield instant results. Remember, FTK's strong suit is that it does all this indexing beforehand on the entire drive for all at the hex level. So now what we're doing is we're revealing that and organizing that inside of the interface of FTK. It actually can do advanced searches on JPEGs. Those JPEGs may be associated when it comes to mail with a particular site. So those attachments can help you trace down where this came from or where it went to. That's the tool FTK. That's the general email forensics that we're going to deal with when it comes to the EC Council's certification.